before I forget. 13 roads. Here is a tale I have not yet forgotten. Listen. Tonight it is 12 pilgrims and a creature that counts. The Salt Road is one of 13. It runs along the cliffs above the Western Sea for 140 miles, and it ends at a shrine where the sick are said to be made well by drinking from a spring that tastes of iron and weeping. People walk it in parties because the wind off the sea is strong enough in autumn to carry a thin man over the edge, and because the road is long, and because pilgrims are easier to rob alone than in groups. 12 of them sheltered in a cave on a night I will tell you about now. There were 12 because there had been 13 at the start, and one of them, a wool merchant with a cough, had turned back at the last inland village. The remaining 12 walked on. I will tell you the names of 3 of them, because 3 is what you can hold in your head, and because the rest of them have no names anymore. Not because the road took them exactly, but because they were eaten before anyone wrote them down. The first was a woman called Mira, a midwife from a town called Helsby, who was walking the road for a daughter that had been born sideways and lived only 9 days. She walked with a little wooden box at her hip with the daughter's first tooth in it, although the daughter had not lived long enough to grow a tooth, and Mira had not explained to anyone whose tooth it was, and no one had asked. The second was a thin priest in his 60s whose name was Onan, who had walked the Salt Road 4 times before, and who knew the shrine well enough to know that the spring did not always cure, and who had come anyway because his hands had begun to shake, and he did not want to die a man who could not bless. The third I cannot give you a name for, because his name is the part of this story that did not survive. I will tell you what he was. He was a young man, 26 or 27, a stonecutter's son from a city in the south who had broken his foot the year before and walked the road with a slight unevenness to his step, and who carried, in a leather case at his shoulder, a flute his grandfather had made him. He played it at the cook fires. He was good. The other pilgrims liked him for it. He is the one who lived. I will call him, because the story makes me, 11. The storm came down on them on the 4th night. It was the kind of storm that the cliff people on that coast call a salt eye, a wall of black weather that comes off the sea sideways with no warning and that strips a man's coat off him in 2 minutes, and that puts the rain into the rock so hard the rock weeps for a week afterward. The pilgrims had been walking single file along a narrow place above the surf, and when the wind hit them, they went to their knees and held the road with both hands. The priest Onan knew the cliff. He shouted into the wind that there was a sea cave half a mile ahead, cut deep into the rock, with a mouth above the tide line. He had passed it on his earlier walks. He had never gone in. He had never needed to. They went in, all 12 of them. The cave's mouth was the shape of a half-shut eye, and the floor sloped downward into the rock, and the air inside was warmer than the air outside in a way the priest did not like and did not say. They went in 50 paces. They went in 100. The wind stopped following them at about the 80th pace. They stopped at a place where the floor leveled out, and they sat against the walls in a rough circle, and they unwrapped what food they had, and they ate. None of them noticed, in the dark, that the cave kept going. The creature came at the 3rd hour of the morning. I will tell you what the pilgrims saw, because 11 told me, and 11 is the only one who saw it and walked out. It was tall. Taller than a tall man, but not by much. Not a giant, nothing of that shape. It was thin in a way that looked wrong, the way a hand looks wrong when the fingers are too long for the palm. Its arms reached, when they hung at its sides, almost to the floor. Its skin was the white of something that has not seen sun in a great while, not pale, but unlit, the white of a thing under stone. It had a face. 11 was certain it had a face. He could not afterward describe it. He said only that the face did not have eyes the way a face has eyes. that there were places where eyes should have been, and the places were closed, and the places had never been open. It walked on its feet, slowly, and it smelled the air as it walked. It came to the circle of pilgrims where they sat against the walls, and it stopped in the middle of the circle, and it lowered its head, and it breathed in. It breathed in for a long time. The pilgrims did not move. They had woken when it entered, every one of them, the way you wake when something large enters a room in the dark. None of them had spoken. None of them had reached for a weapon. The priest Onan, who had blessed dying men for 40 years, and who knew the difference between a thing that could be spoken to and a thing that could not, sat very still with his hands flat on the cave floor, and he did not pray out loud. The creature began to count. It went to the first pilgrim, a saddler from the inland market towns, a heavy man with a white beard, and it reached out one of its long arms, and it laid the flat of its palm against the saddler's forehead, very gently, the way a mother feels a child for fever. It held the palm there for a breath. Then it spoke. It said, 1. Its voice was not the voice of a man. It was not the voice of an animal. It was the voice of a thing that had learned the word from listening to men say it, and had kept the word, and had nothing else to say with it. It moved to the second pilgrim. It laid its palm on her forehead. It said, 2. It went around the circle. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It touched each forehead. It named each number aloud. When it reached 12, it lowered its hand, and it stood for a moment in the dark, and it walked back the way it had come, deeper into the cave, and the pilgrims heard it go a long way before they heard it stop. None of the pilgrims slept again that night. At dusk the next day, the creature came back. It walked into the circle. It went directly to the saddler, the heavy man, the one, and it bent down, and it laid its palm against his forehead a second time, and it spoke his number. It said, 1. And then, and 11 would tell me, 3 weeks later, that this was the part he could not stop seeing. It spoke the saddler's name. It said, Bren Ostri. It had not been told the saddler's name. None of them had spoken the saddler's name in front of it. The saddler had told the others his name on the first night of the walk, 4 days before the cave. The creature had not been there. The creature had not heard. The creature knew anyway. It took the saddler. It did not drag him. It bent, and it lifted him with one of its long arms, and it carried him deeper into the cave, the way a man carries a sleeping child. The saddler did not scream. He had time to scream. He chose, in the way a man chooses with what little is left, not to. The other 11 pilgrims listened. They heard a sound about 100 paces in. It was a single sound. It was not loud. The priest Onan understood, before any of the others, what the rule was. He said it, very quietly, when the creature was gone. He said, "It counts us in the morning. It eats one of us at dusk. It eats by name. It will count again tomorrow." He said, "It knows our names because we have spoken them aloud, in this cave, before it came. It heard us when we did not know it was listening. We have been heard." He said, "We have 11 dawns." He was wrong about the 11, but only because he did not yet know about 11. On the second dawn, the creature came back, and it counted again. It went around the circle. It touched each forehead. It said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There were only 11 pilgrims now. The saddler was gone. But the creature said 12. It touched the empty space where the saddler had sat against the wall, and it said, 1. It touched the next pilgrim, and it said, 2. It went around the circle, and the count came out at 12, because the creature was not counting bodies. It was counting the cave. The cave held 12. The cave had always held 12. The cave would hold 12 until the creature finished what was in it. That dusk it took the second pilgrim, a tanner from a village up the coast. It said his name. It carried him deep. The third dawn, 12 again. The third dusk, the third pilgrim, a young woman who had been walking for a brother in a sickbed, gone. On the fourth dawn, 11 did the thing. He had thought about it through the third night. He had not slept. He had listened to the breathing of the others, 8 of them now, plus himself. And he had thought about the count, and about the names, and about the way the creature had known names it had not been told. He had thought, it does not see us. It feels us. It feels the shape of our heads under its hand, and it counts the shapes, and the shapes have names because the cave has heard the names. He had thought, if it asks me my name, I will give it a name that is not mine. It did not ask. It never asked. It came at dawn, and it counted, and on the fourth dawn it reached him fourth in the circle, and it laid its palm against his forehead, and it said the number. It said, 4. And 11, very quietly, into the dark, not louder than a breath, said his name. He said, 11. He had decided in the night to call himself by the number he was not. 4 was the number the creature had just given him. 11 was the number that was unclaimed, the number that was already in the count and would be claimed last, the number that would not be reached for 10 more dusks. He had thought, if I am 11, I will be eaten last. If I am eaten last, I will have 10 dawns to find a way out. The creature paused. It held its palm against his forehead for a longer breath than it had held against any other forehead. 11 felt the long fingers tighten very slightly. He felt the cool of the palm. He thought in that moment that he had killed himself with cleverness, that the creature had heard the lie and would name him and would take him at dusk for being the kind of meat that lied. The creature said, 11, and it moved on. It finished the count. It said, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It said 11 a second time when it reached the pilgrim who had previously been counted 11th. It did not seem to notice that it had said the number twice. It walked out of the circle and went deep into the cave. That dusk, it came back. It walked the circle. It bent to the fourth pilgrim, 11's actual place, and it laid its palm against the empty air because 11 had moved, very quietly, to a different spot against the wall. The creature held its palm there. It spoke the number it had given that place. It said, 4. And then it tried to speak the name. It opened its mouth. It made no sound. It stood there a long time with its palm against the empty air and its mouth open, and no name. Then it lowered its arm. It moved to the 5th place. It said, 5. It spoke the 5th pilgrim's name. It took her. That was the trick. Not the false name itself. The false name was only the door. The trick was that the creature could count the cave, but could not count the pilgrims, and could only eat what the cave had given it a number and a name for, and the name had to come from a head the creature had touched. 11 had given the creature the number 11 attached to a head, and the cave had accepted it, and from that morning the count came out at 12, but the names came out at 11. Because there was a head in the cave the creature had counted as a number that already existed, and the cave had no name to give for the duplicate. The creature was confused. 11 could see it was confused. On the 5th dawn, it counted twice. It went around the circle, and it said the numbers, and at 12 it stopped, and it stood in the middle of the circle for a long time, and then it went around again. Both counts came out at 12. Both lists of names came out at 11. It could not find the 12th name. It took the 5th pilgrim that dusk anyway, and the 6th the dusk after, and the 7th the dusk after that. The rule of the cave still worked. The cave was still feeding it. But every dawn after the 4th, it counted twice, and it stood longer in the middle of the circle, and 11 could feel, though he could not have said how, that the creature was beginning to be afraid. A thing that has counted to 12 every dawn since the cave was made does not know what to do with 11. The pilgrims who were left understood, after the 5th dusk, what 11 had done. The priest Onan understood first. He did not thank 11. He did not bless him. He understood that he himself was going to be eaten, and that the trick had not saved him, and that the trick had not been meant to save him. He sat against the cave wall with his shaking hands flat on the stone, and on the 7th dawn, when the creature touched his forehead and said his number, the priest Onan said his own real name out loud, very clearly, before the creature could speak it. He said, "Onan, of the shrine on the cliff. I have walked this road 4 times. I know what is happening." The creature said his name back to him in the creature's voice, and that dusk it took him. The midwife Mira lasted until the 10th dawn. She did not speak when the creature touched her. She held the wooden box at her hip very tightly in both hands. The creature said her number and her name. That dusk, it came for her. She did not let go of the box. The box went deep into the cave with her. 11 heard it, very faintly, the small wooden sound of a box striking stone somewhere far in. On the 11th dusk, the creature took the last of the named. There was only 11 now. He sat against the wall in the dark. He could hear the creature, deep in the cave, counting. He could hear it going around the empty circle, touching the air, saying the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then again. 1, 2, 3. The cave still held 12. The cave would always hold 12. But there was only one head in it now, and the creature could not find the 11 names that should have been attached to the other 11 heads, because the 11 names had been eaten, and the 12th head had no name the cave could give. The creature counted. The creature could not stop counting. The creature had been built to count, and the count was wrong, and the creature could not leave the cave until the count was right. 11 stood up. He walked on his uneven foot very slowly toward the mouth of the cave. He passed the place where the saddler had sat. He passed the place where the priest had sat. He passed the place where the midwife had sat. He could hear the creature behind him, deep in the rock, still counting. The creature did not come. The creature could not come for what it had not named. He walked out of the cave at the hour just before dawn. The sea was calm. The cliff was wet. The sky above the water was the color of an old bruise. He walked north along the salt road. He did not stop walking until the sun was high, and when he stopped, he sat down on a stone, and he tried to say his own name out loud. He could not. He tried again. He knew what it was. He knew the shape of it in his mouth. He knew the syllables. He knew his grandfather had spoken it, and his mother had spoken it, and the other pilgrims, in the early days of the walk before the cave, had spoken it to him over the cook fires. His mouth made no sound for it. He could say every other word he knew. He could say bread. He could say cliff. He could say the names of all 11 pilgrims who had been eaten. He could say Bren Ostry, the saddler, and Onan the priest, and Mira the midwife, and the 8 others. Every name. He had them all. He had carried them out of the cave because somebody had to. He could say 11. He could say 11 as easily as breathing. His own name was not in him anymore. He had given the creature a name to take. The creature had not taken him. But a name had gone into the cave with the creature's count, and the cave had kept it, the way the cave had kept the 12. I met him on the salt road 3 weeks later. He was walking north with a slight limp. He was carrying a flute case at his shoulder. He was thin, in the way a man is thin who has not eaten properly in some time, and he was alone. And when I greeted him on the road, he greeted me back. And when I asked him his name, he opened his mouth and closed it, and opened it again and shook his head. He told me to call him 11. We walked together for 2 days. He told me the story I have just told you. He told it in the order I have told it, without ornament, the way a man tells a thing he has rehearsed in his own head every night for 3 weeks, because he is afraid of forgetting any of it. He told me the 11 names. He made me repeat them back to him. He said he would make me repeat them every morning for the rest of my walk with him, until I had them, because somebody had to carry them, and he was not sure he could be trusted to carry them alone. I have them. I am carrying them. I will not say them tonight, because they are not the part of the story you came for, but I have them, and I will say them, on a night when the names are what the telling needs. On the 3rd morning he turned inland, off the salt road, onto a smaller track that went up into the hills toward a town I did not know. He said he had family there. He said he was not going on to the shrine. He said the shrine could not give him back what he had given away. He said it without bitterness. He said it the way a man says the price of a thing he has already paid. I asked him before he left whether he wished he had not done the trick. He thought about it for a long time. He said, 11 of them are dead. I am alive. I gave the creature a name to take and it took the wrong one. It took mine instead of me. That is the bargain. I do not get to wish I had made a different one. I made the one I made. He said, I would do it again. He said, I just would not know, the second time, what it was going to cost. He walked up the inland track. I watched him until the track turned. He did not look back. The cave is still there. I have not gone in. I have stood at the mouth of it, on the cliff above the surf, on a clear afternoon in autumn when the sea was flat and the wind was from the land. I have looked down the slope of the floor into the dark. I have listened. The creature is still counting. I could hear it, very faintly, deep in the rock. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then a pause, then again. The cave still holds 12. The cave will always hold 12. The creature will count until the last name is restored to the last head, and the last name is in a man walking with a slight limp on a road inland, and the man cannot give it back even if he wanted to. I have stood beside many things on the salt road that I do not understand. I do not understand the cave. I do not understand the creature. I do not understand whether the cave was made for the creature or the creature was made by the cave, or whether the two of them are one thing pretending, in the dark, to be two. I understand the trick. I understand what it cost. A name is a small thing. You carry it your whole life, and you do not feel its weight. You do not know what you have until you give it away to keep something larger, and the larger thing leaves, and the name does not come back. If you ever shelter in a cave on the salt road in a storm, and the road is long, and the storms come hard, and you may have to, listen for breathing in the dark before you say your own name aloud. Listen for a long breath. Listen for a thing that smells the air. If you hear it, give it a number. Do not give it a name. I am telling you what I saw before I forget. Good night.